unfortunately do not have the bandwidth to be able to do video, so I'm able to see our guests, but you're fortunate enough not to have to be able to see me, though I do apologize because if I had known, I wouldn't have shaved or gotten a haircut today. But we hope you're enjoying the 2020 FLAACOs virtual conference. Just now, we have a really special presentation for you that is the subject of which is very near and dear to my heart. Advances in technology to support value-based care. Our stellar lineup of experts today includes Mr. Jim Clark, Dr. Saul Lizerbram, and Mr. Ed Van Bach. Jim Clark is the Chief Growth Officer at Health Access. Prior to Health Access, Jim served as Vice President of Business Development at Centene Corporation, CEO of Visionary Healthcare, and he was the founder and CEO of SoftData, another successful healthcare technology company. Mr. Clark's specialties include corporate strategy, business process improvement, and product development, just to name a few. Next, we have Dr. Saul Lizerbram, who is currently chairman and co-founder of ForeSee Medical, Inc. He was formerly the founder and CEO at Health Fusion, and Dr. Lizerbram is a 40-year veteran of the healthcare industries. With a resume really too long to list, Saul's many awards and appointments speak for themselves. He was chosen health advisor to California Governor Jerry Brown, a member of the advisory committee for the California State Insurance Commissioner. Saul has been medical director for the Prudential Insurance Company, and he was also the recipient of a California State Senate resolution for recognition of his many contributions to healthcare. There's much more that I might add regarding Dr. Lizerbram, but if you notice, I see him already starting to blush a little bit, so we'll move on, because last but hardly least, we have Mr. Ed Van Bach, Senior Director at Audacious Inquiry. Mr. Van Bach serves as Senior Director of Product Management for the Florida HIE, where he leads the products team for the Florida HIE notifications, data quality, and national network gateway solutions. In addition to his work here in Florida, Ed manages multiple products deployed across the nation. In the past decade, he has led teams to deploy a dozen healthcare products and 20 HIEs across the country. His work has helped numerous ACOs to focus on success and to streamline patient care. Ed is joining us virtually today from Boulder, Colorado. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks.
So, when we talk about technology to support value-based care, we're talking about a very broad topic. And we might be talking about anything from population health plugins for EHRs to the latest in patient engagement technologies to artificial intelligence-assisted in-home patient monitoring. It's a whole large field. So in order to get a sense of where you each fit into this industry, I'd like to look at it from the patient standpoint. From the patient's journey, let's use that as a framework, the patient's journey through the healthcare system. Patients enter the healthcare system through a variety of front doors, and depending on many factors, they're going to be impacted by all manner of technology during their lifelong journey. So let's go around the table, and let's start this with Ed. And I'd like to ask each of you, tell us in your case, Ed, how does Audacious Inquiry's technology impact the patient and or his medical care team during that patient's journey through the healthcare system?
Sure, Rich. Thank you for moderating today. I'm glad to be here with all of you, with Dr. Lizerbram and Jim Clark. We really enjoyed working together to prepare this panel and are looking forward to next year when we can join in person. The Florida HIE notification system provides connectivity throughout the patient journey, but most specifically for today at the beginning. As soon as the patient has a visit or is admitted, we can help clinicians know and pull the clinical data from that point of care. We leverage the deep connectivity throughout the state and have 95, 96% of the acute acute care beds connected, and over 200 SNF and post-acute facilities. We're growing into EMS agencies, so soon we'll be having notifications from those treat and release ambulance visits too that don't necessarily result in a hospitalization. We're growing into behavioral health facilities as well. All of these data sources provide a robust, solid foundation to share data through all of the various data formats, which helps providers, ACOs, health plans, those entities engaged in value-based risk contracts. We take these notifications and really help them provide better care at the specific point in time during the initial visit and then those subsequent visits. And you'll hear Dr. Lizerbram and Jim Clark talk about some of the really integral areas and other value adds throughout the patient's journey.
Okay, so we place you really right at the starting gate of, for instance, an acute care episode. You're the guy that, you're the technology that's going to notify us of an event that is ongoing, that is about to happen, patient about to be admitted because he's been in the emergency room, patient entering a nursing home, those types of alerts. So you're really signaling that to the providers, correct? Or to the health plan? Absolutely.
To the ACOs, the health plans, the providers, and that trickles to all the clinicians, their care teams, and then to the patient.
Okay, so you're designating targets for action, and that's really helpful relaying that. Let's move on to Dr. Lizerbram. Same question for you, Saul. How does ForeSee impact the patient and/or his medical team during that journey? Where do you impact him?
So we impact the patient at the point of care, and generally the primary care physician, and we impact them prospectively, real time, and retrospectively. And what I mean by that is that our software, which does analytics on many data points to assist the doctor in disease detection, as well as focusing on Medicare Advantage HCC coding. And it can be used prospectively before the patient gets to the office. All the data that we accumulate, which is from like the EHR, hospital discharge summaries, laboratory, x-ray results, specialty dictation, all that data gets into our repository, goes through our artificial intelligence and algorithms, and it can be used prospectively before the patient comes in to review and assist the doctor with disease detection. It can be used real time while the patient is seeing the doctor, so that it actually pops up within the EHR information on the screen. And it can be used retrospectively by the administrative staff to look at what opportunities lie in disease detection and HCC coding. So we impact the patient from a quality and for the provider and economic standpoint at the point of care in the office.
Okay, so you use the term artificial intelligence as it refers to HCC coding. Let me back up for a second. When you talk about HCC codes or RAF scores as we know them, you're also talking about quality, are you not? Because to the extent that there is a disease process there that hasn't been addressed, and you can pick that up for the clinicians to address, that's going to improve quality. At least that's what we've always believed, and it's certainly what I believe in terms of HCC scoring. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. So, you know, there's other applications out there that do recapture of previous codes from previous years. Ours, the distinguishing factor is that we do a real-time disease detection. So, and sometimes in the recapture, you can be recapturing a code for a disease that really doesn't exist anymore and shouldn't be coded for. On the other hand, you can recapture codes that haven't picked up current diseases And that's where the real quality comes in, where you can look at multiple areas of information and data and assist the provider in disease detection. And look, we all know that a lot of offices use HCC coders, but it's overwhelming for a human to try to put together all the data from so many different sources. This uses the algorithms and artificial intelligence that does assist in quality and assists in the doctor achieving the economics reimbursement that they deserve, they actually deserve.
What are the source documents you're using quickly? Is it claims? Is it the EMR? Where are you getting this data from?
Yes, it's both of those plus. So it's claims, EHR, laboratory feed, X-ray reports, a pharmacy, specialty consults, hospital discharge, both like the specialty and the hospital discharge usually come in PDF format, where we have natural language processing that will read the PDF like a human would read it. And I'll explain the difference between just natural language processing that recognizes disease words versus reading it using artificial intelligence. So other natural language processing might pick up the word CO or the acronym COPD. But if the doctor dictated there's no evidence of COPD, we read that in context and we would negate that as a diagnosis for this patient.
Okay, understood. I know the frustration a lot of my physicians have is false positives when it comes to coders
Right.
touching charts and bringing in potential chronic conditions. So I've got the two of you. I've got Ed and Saul pegged in this is very, very specific in terms of identifying and alerting. Very specific in terms of seeing conditions that need to be addressed. Jim, in your case, based on your bio and your company profile, I think you're taking this from a different direction, a higher altitude, if you will. Please.
I would agree with that, Rich, and thank you again. Thanks for everyone who brought this together. It's an opportunity, it's a privilege really to be here with the panelists and be participating here, so thank you. But yes, Health Access essentially helps risk-bearing healthcare organizations, those entities that are taking on risk, to manage that risk and really empower clinical and administrative staff to work with the patient and help that patient on its journey through clinical decisions or even administrative work that needs to happen in decisions regarding benefit plans and so forth. So our clients are ACOs, also IPAs, delegated IPAs typically, other risk-bearing provider type organizations, as well as healthcare payers. So we're on sort of both sides of that equation. And again, our technology comes together to aggregate data. We take data from many sources. We don't have the hooks into as many sources as Ed's group does. We can feed in data through organizations like Audacious and so forth, but then put that information in front of clinicians and administrative staff as well as patients so that they can collaborate on the patient's care plan, and how that patient is going to improve through their journey of the clinical as well as administrative processes. So that really, we touch all aspects of a health payer or an ACO or an IPA type organization that needs to be managing those functions.
So then is most of your work, Jim, done at the corporate level, or do you also spin down into the individual at the clinical level, or is that done by the corporate staff?
It's a good question, and it could be a little bit of both. I would say it's mainly corporate or remote, if you will, care coordination, social work, care team collaboration, as well as quality and utilization management, all medical management related activities. But there's usually certainly collaboration, and it could be staff at the provider practice level or in the home or so forth that's also providing care coordination, care management, that, that connection with the patient, as well as the patients being involved and the patient stakeholders as well. But most of our work, and we have technology and the service teams that help manage that, happens at more of a centralized place, and then there's the extension to the point of care that's often utilized by nurses or other care coordinator types, care navigators as well.
So then I think I got it. So if we look at a ACO or a Medicare Advantage plan is kind of a military force that's there to defend the patients, protect the patients, keep the patients safe, we would look at ED as providing target designation. Here's things that you need to work on. We know this in real time. Here's where you can move some of your resources. We've got, correct me if I'm wrong, Saul is providing actual logistics support and logistics support to the people on the front lines to help them address specific issues of chronic care management. And Jim is really back there in the war room with the generals helping to do the overall program for how we're going to allocate resources across the continuum. Does that make some sense for you all?
Sounds good.
Okay. So I think we have a pretty good idea of where you're all coming from. That leads us into, let me ask you this. When we look at each of you in your individual worlds, I want to ask you, and we'll start with Saul on this. What is the clear value that your technology brings to healthcare organizations and the patients they serve? What's the value proposition there?
So, Rich, it really gets broken down into a couple of segments. One is quality of care through disease detection, and the second is on the economic side to assist the organization, the doctor and the organization, to use the accurate HCC coding groups, the ICD-10, so that they can optimize and maximize their reimbursement from the Medicare Advantage plans. This isn't upcoding. This is strictly doing exactly what Medicare wants, by using the artificial intelligence and algorithms to assist in getting to the optimization of that reimbursement. But it doesn't neglect the fact that there's a strong quality of care component by disease detection that might and often goes unrecognized. So it really hits on and is very strong on those two areas.
Okay, so you are on the HCC side and the RAF side, and that is the value proposition, because the fact of the matter is that ACOs are limited to how much their RAF scores might expand over the course of a contract period. But I remind people when we talk about HCCs and RAF scores that we may look at it as a revenue opportunity, but Medicare looks at it as a quality opportunity and always has. Medicare has always felt that, well, listen, if you're managing a lot more conditions in a population, you need to be paid for that, because the patient is obviously recognizably more ill. It's going to take more work to manage that patient, to keep them stable. And so I thank you for that work. The HCC codes is important. Coding is important to all of us for both those reasons, financially and quality. And I thank you for that, Saul. Jim Clark, how about you? Tell us about the value proposition that Health Access brings to the table.
Well, starting at the highest level, I would say our goal is to help improve quality, help maintain good quality, help improve outcomes, while at the same time managing costs. So keeping costs under control. You can't really have one without the other. And so while Saul's organization is looking at that opportunity and saying, identifying the patients and seeing what conditions those are, our tools help manage that condition going forward. And especially chronic conditions, when you're bringing care teams together and needing to get ahead of high cost events. That's what we're looking to do. We do deploy predictive analytics. We try to model populations and so forth. When you're talking about population health, you're trying to manage those high acuity events, and that's what our technology tries to do. At the same time, putting information in front of decision makers, clinicians and patients and their caregivers and stakeholders that can affect that patient's outcomes and continue to improve that patient's care while avoiding, again, these costly events. So it's really about that balance between cost and quality. We manage many aspects of the organization, but those are the two real key focuses.
So you might, then you might be in the position of using, certainly we know you would be using what Ed provides, and I want to get to Ed on this very question, but it sounds like you might take what Dr. Lizerbram provides for ForeSee Medical to feed into your programs for what needs to be done for specific populations, or is it down to the specific patient level? Can you expand on that?
Well, certainly. That's going to empower the provider and the ACO to identify those patients that need additional care or need, certainly is a revenue opportunity to bill properly, as you mentioned earlier, Rich. But then our tools would bring in clinical decision support to and clinical guidelines for the care plans that are going to empower that clinician and empower the patient to manage that condition or that second or third condition. These are comorbidities that we're talking about. High cost, high needs kind of management environments or situations. So that's why these tools are kind of multifaceted, and they touch on multiple types of users to enable the care team to do a better job.
Okay, I'm getting a picture and seeing the overlap there. Mr. Van Bach, for you, tell us what is the value proposition that your company brings to the table, that Audacious Inquiry brings to the table, and who they bring it to. Is it the ACO? Is it managed care organizations, Medicare Advantage, individual physician groups? You tell us.
Sure. It's really those that need data to perform clinical functions, and that includes ACOs, managed care, health plans, et cetera. Certainly a wide range of folks who participate today, and we see growing in use of these systems throughout the Florida market. It extends to their providers, care teams, and thus to their patients, as they really try and understand the full continuum of the patient's healthcare needs. It allows, I think the key focus that we've all touched on today is those in value-based risk contracts. There's certainly a variety of those. I expect in the future we'll see some more flavors of that, but certainly those. I'd also say ACOs can much better engage when they have access to the event data, to the clinical data through the Florida HIE Archer platform, through some of the other emergency data, SDOH data, the care team data that can be provided in real time. It gives the data required for 4 important areas: clinical care, the quality efforts, risk adjustment, and sort of the business of running ACOs and risk-based contracts, and then some attribution efforts as well. So clinical, patient care, quality, risk, and attribution. It certainly works with a variety of other vendors, including ForeSee Medical, how they really focus and understand the full state of disease for the patient, and then on a larger level. And with Jim's Health Access platform, really to sit and be the general and look at the entire population and the entire group of risk-bearing folks and that are subject to that, and whether that be ACOs or health plans, and really look at analytical approaches for solving some of those business challenges. ACOs need clinical data to further the patient care and for their business, and that's what we're here to provide. And with a smile. Thanks, Rich. Well, it looks like Rich is offline. So while he reconnects, Dr. Lizerbram, I have a question for you, and that is, as a potential client for an organization as an ACO or a Medicare Advantage plan, can you share a success story about how your organization has helped and what that really has led to?
Sure. So Ed, thanks for jumping in there and taking over as the moderator. So I'll use an example. Actually, it's a group in Florida. It's a medical group, a good-sized medical group in Florida that has a large Medicare Advantage population. And where we exceeded our own expectations is we found that even though they had good coders, we find that it seems like every medical group has the best coders in the world. It's remarkable how every group has the best coders. But even so, we found that they're human. They're going to miss. It's very difficult. They're going to miss opportunities, and it's just so difficult for a coder to take information from a discharge summary, specialty consults, x-rays, laboratory pharmacy, and try to put together to find out which HCC category would best represent this patient in ICD-10. And what exceeded our expectation was the fact that they had a pretty high RAF score compared to the average. And despite that, we were able to bring additional value to increase the overall RAF scores. But let's not forget the quality component. That was another thing that exceeded our expectations, is that we were able to identify for the doctor some underlying disease entities that were just overlooked. At no fault of the doctor, no fault of the coders. It's just sheer volume of data. So, that was a pleasant surprise.
That's a really wonderful impact and way to help, these businesses move forward. Jim, can you share a nice story?
Sure. One first comes to mind is we've worked with an ACO, actually helped the ACO come together and form. And this was a group that was really focused on a high needs population, very focused statewide. So the group formed, groups that had worked kind of indirectly together before, but came together in this organization, and the cost of care was very high. Again, so we brought our tools in and our technology and services and helped start to, first of all, aggregate the data into one set, and then put that information in front of the clinicians and staff and even patients. And some interesting things began to happen. Identifiers began to appear as to where the high cost spend was and where the opportunities, again, to leverage the tools, but also keep a balance between managing costs while at the same time improving quality, improving performance on both of those. And as the group began to work together and see the information come together, some trends started to develop, and the group started to understand best practices, what was happening in one part of the state. It's not always the same as what's going on in another part of the state, but there were some similarities, there were some abilities to change how things were being done, and the performance was remarkable. And by the second year, the savings was significant, really became a high performer. And what we ended up doing was then taking that model of care, that model of engagement, and then going to other payers, actually created a new company with this form and this group to go to negotiate contracts with other payers, even commercial, and take on risk, in a graduated form, but take on some of that value-based arrangements from other payers. So it enabled the group to really do well with Medicare and then take that model of care, model of collaboration into other payer arrangements.
And what about you, Ed? What, where did you see engagements that exceeded your expectations?
Sure. One of the organizations that we work with in Florida is an accountable care organization. It has had a couple.
Oh, we lost Ed there.
We're having some fun technology.
Yeah, there you go.
So we were able to lower readmission rates by 12%, this individual organization, which is quite remarkable. They were able to improve quality scores and improve the rate of TCM visits. Really, that allowed them to increase revenue in some of their business operations that I know you guys both are cued into. But allowed them to achieve significant shared savings with one of their MSSP contracts. And they've been able to grow and add more patients, more care team providers, and grow into other areas such as behavioral health, and really help serve those patient populations well.
Nice. So since Rich isn't here, I know that one of the questions that he wanted to ask us is, what do the three of us think that is sort of next on the horizon in advances in technologies to population healthcare management? So since Rich isn't here, I know he wanted to hear from us, but maybe Jim can tell us what or I'll start off just by saying, personally, I think that predictive analytics is really going to be very special in advances of technology for the patients at the primary care level. Predictive analytics are now being used, but in huge organizations, the Mayo Clinics and very large organizations. I think that the predictive analytics are going to come right down to the individual primary care physician to assist them in quality care and predicting disease entities that may not appear yet in the usual diagnostic testing that we do or that the physician does. So that's what I can see in the next major advances. Jim, what do you think?
Well, I would agree with you on that, certainly. And the thing I see most kind of front and center for the next 12 or 24 months or so is just a real expansion on data exchange. The CMS has put out a rule now. It goes into effect. They keep sliding the date, but it goes into effect sometime in 2021. And it mandates that payers, healthcare insurance organizations, are able to provide access to patients' data, to member data, through standardized APIs. And basically what that means is we as consumers, we as patients and members now have access to the insurance companies, the data that the insurance company holds, and I can then have my primary care provider gain access to that data, or I can have a personal health record of my own, and I can grab data from multiple sources, and it becomes more fluid. They've standardized the formats of the data to some extent, and it helps the fluidity of data. So I see that as a trend here in the next year or two that's going to be impactful. And then what we're focused on when we look back and we have time, who has time for creativity and dreaming, but if we had time, we would focus it on the user experience, really getting to a less touches on the keyboard and more natural interaction, language interaction, no touch, verbal cues, and so forth. And so that's an interface thing that we're really looking to design. We have a section of our company, a couple of lucky folks get to spend time in this innovation lab, and it's their job to just dream, like the Imagineers of Disney. That's these folks. And the other thing that they focus on is a multi-user experience, the patient's experience, the clinician's experience, the administrators, and just a real collaborative environment for sharing information. And then we're trying to automate as much as we can. So we're building rule sets, and we envision one there to be sort of these chat boxes you see today, but there's a person on the other side answering specific questions. We expect that to become more automated. And so the information is available in real time to someone seeking information. All this data that can come together over the next few years, I think there's going to be real-time access to that data based on real, critical guidelines and restrictions and so forth. But to the experience just to be more fluid, more real time, more impactful. Saul started out saying early on that a lot more decision support at the point of care, and I think that that's going to be true throughout the healthcare experience.
Ed?
Sure, I would agree with both. And running an ACO and a care organization is growing in complexity, and it takes specific teams and groups and other folks to help you complete that successfully. And I think we've seen that here today. I see continued advances in just connectivity with some of the FHIR-based APIs that I think Jim mentioned earlier, some of the patient access, the Open Notes initiative, some of what we're seeing come out of the Cures Act and information blocking. So more data and more information, and less humans having to chase data around, whether that's HCC codes, trying to get data for analytics engines, or trying to find discharge summaries. The more of that can be automated really will allow, the clinicians and the staff to work at the top of their licenses. And then lastly, I see patients being much more involved, being able to look at their medical history from their cell phones and to really have a much more engaged approach to their care and working with a team.
Yeah, we're certainly in an exciting environment here. So I think Rich may have come back. Rich, are you there?
Gentlemen, I'm here. My apologies. These are the vagaries of post-hurricane electronics. I was in touch by text. I'm aware that Ed was pretty much in control after I left. Where are we all?
Well, we just finished up looking at the horizons. Basically, we completed our agenda just this moment, so your timing is perfect. And it's time, I think, to wrap it up. So whatever direction you want to take us, Rich, we're ready. We stand ready.
Well, I did have the opportunity to listen in on what I missed, and I'd like to thank you all for your contributions to the industry. I'd like to thank you for everything you've done today in opening our eyes to some of the possibilities that are out there with technology. If it wasn't for partners like you, we wouldn't be where we are today. We wouldn't have the successes as an industry that we've had today, and that just speaks volumes about the hard work that you all put in. I'm reminded that in 2012, when I had a couple decades of experience with Medicare Advantage, thought I knew the program, and then people started talking this population health stuff, and I didn't even understand what population health really was at the time. And now, a short few years later, we all use it in common parlance. We wouldn't be able to do what we do if we weren't looking at patients from a population standpoint, in addition to an individual as individual patients. So what each of you bring to the table in that end is just spectacular and essential. And we really appreciate a great program that you put together for us today. And I thank you.
Thanks, Rich. It was an honor to be with you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rich.